Hello guys, in this video we are going to discuss the biography of William Shakespeare, a great English writer of all time. William Shakespeare was an English poet and playwright, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and the world's preeminent dramatist. He is often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon. His surviving works, including some collaborations, consist of about 38 plays, 154 sonnets, and 2 long narrative poems. His plays have been translated into every major living language and are performed more often than those of any other playwright. Shakespeare was born and raised in Stratford-upon-Avon. Guys, we will discuss his biography in 3 different phases. The first phase is early life of Shakespeare. The second phase is Shakespeare's life in London and theatrical career. The third phase is latter years of Shakespeare and his death. William Shakespeare was the son of John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. His father was a successful glover. His mother was the daughter of an affluent land-owning farmer. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon on 26th April 1564. His actual birth date remains unknown, but is traditionally observed on 23rd April on St. George's Day. This date, which can be traced back to an 18th century scholar's mistake, it has proved appealing to biographers since Shakespeare died on 23rd April 1616. He was the third child of 8 and the eldest surviving son. Most biographers agree that Shakespeare was probably educated at the King's New School in Stratford, which was a free school about a quarter-mile from his home. The school had provided an intensive education in Latin grammar and the classics. This is what reflected in Shakespeare's works. At the age of 18, Shakespeare married the 26-year-old Anne Hathaway. 6 months after the marriage, Anne gave birth to a daughter, Susanna. Twin son Hamnet and a daughter Judith followed almost 2 years later in 1585. After the birth of the twins, Shakespeare left few historical traces until he is mentioned as part of the London theatre scene in 1592, and scholars refer to the years between 1585 and 1592 as Shakespeare's lost years. These lost years of Shakespeare invited many mythical stories. Nicholas Ruve, Shakespeare's first biographer, recounted a Stratford legend that Shakespeare fled the town for London to escape prosecution for deer poaching in the estate of local squire Thomas Lucy. Shakespeare is also supposed to have taken his revenge on Lucy by writing a scandalous ballad about him. Another 18th century story has Shakespeare starting his theatrical career minding the horses of theatre patrons in London. John Aubrey reported that Shakespeare had been a country schoolmaster. Some 20th century scholars have suggested that Shakespeare may have been employed as a schoolmaster by Alexander Horton of Lancashire, a Catholic landowner who named a certain William Shakeshaft in his will. No evidence substantiates such stories other than hearsay collected after his death. It is not known exactly when Shakespeare began writing. but contemporary allusions and records of performances show that several of his plays were on the London stage by 1592. He was well enough known in London by then to be attacked in print by the playwright Robert Greene in his Groat's Worth of Wit. Scholars differ on the exact meaning of Robert Greene, but most agree that Greene is accusing Shakespeare of reaching above his rank in trying to match university-educated writers known as the university wits, such as Christopher Marlowe, Thomas Nash, and Greene himself. Greene's attack is the earliest surviving mention of Shakespeare's career in the theatre. Biographers suggest that his career may have begun any time from the mid-1580s to just before Greene's remarks. From 1594, Shakespeare's plays were performed only by the Lord Chamberlain's men, a company owned by a group of players including Shakespeare, that soon became the leading playing company in London. After the death of Queen Elizabeth in 1603, the company was awarded a royal patent by a new king, James I, and changed its name to the King's Men. In 1599, a partnership of company members built their own theatre on the south bank of the River Thames, which they called the Globe. In 1608, the partnership also took over the Blackfriars Indoor Theatre. Records of Shakespeare's property purchases and investments indicate that the company made him a wealthy man. In 1597, he bought the second largest house in Stratford, known as New Place. Some of Shakespeare's plays were published in quarto editions from 1594. By 1598, his name had become a selling point and began to appear on the title pages. Shakespeare continued to act in his own and other plays after his success as a playwright, although we cannot know for certain which roles Shakespeare played. In 1709, Rowe passed down a tradition that Shakespeare played the ghost of Hamlet's father. Later traditions maintain that he also played Adam in As You Like It and a chorus in Henry V, though scholars doubt the sources of the information. So let's move to the third and the last phase. Rowe was the first biographer to pass down the tradition that Shakespeare retired to Stratford some years before his death, but retirement from all the work was uncommon at that time, and Shakespeare continued to visit London. After 1606 or 7, Shakespeare wrote fewer plays, and none are attributed to him after 1613. His last 3 plays were collaborations, probably with John Fletcher, who succeeded him as the house playwright for the King's Men. In Shakespeare's will, he left the bulk of his large estate to his elder daughter Susanna. Shakespeare was buried in the chancel of the Holy Trinity Church 2 days after his death. The epitaph carved into the stone slab covering his grave includes a curse against moving his bones, which was carefully avoided during restoration of the church in 2008. It is written that, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones." So, Shakespeare was a respected poet and playwright in his own day, but his reputation did not rise to its present heights until the 19th century. The Romantics, in particular, acclaimed Shakespeare's genius, and the Victorian worshipped Shakespeare with a reverence that George Bernard Shaw called him bardolatory. In the 20th century, his work was repeatedly adopted and rediscovered by new movements in scholarship and performance. His plays remain highly popular today and are constantly studied, performed, and reinterpreted in diverse cultural and political contexts throughout the world. So guys, this was all about Shakespeare. Stay tuned for more biographies to come. If you like the video, please consider subscribing to this channel.